with, we were wondering how much money the school was looking to cut in the upcoming year.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit difficult to project exactly what the cut's going to be because the legislature hasn't came out with the exact cut per pupil. And I say cut because we're more than likely going to get a cut. It's going to happen one way or the other. Low end is, they're saying the $165 per cut, student cut that we got in this school year is the start. And then from there, depending on which place you go to, tells you where the money's going to come in at. We think, or we know that the school aid budget based on the January revenue estimating conference, which occurs twice a year, once in January, once in May, so it's going to come up again, that the school aid fund is about $433 per student short. Okay, and what that equates to here in Homer is somewhere around $1 million less in revenue. Now, if you multiply a number of students times the 433, it doesn't come to $1 million, but our expenses went up from the previous year. The other thing within that projection is the fact we threw in there that nobody was going to retire because the projections occurred before that. So now that some people have decided formally to retire with the buyout that you're going to ask about later, that did or does cause effect on that. But that $1 million is before that were to happen. So the million is a high number. So you got to be take it with a grain of salt a little bit. My best estimate for what's really going to happen and what the legislators are coming out with and how many kids we're going to have in our district, I think it's going to be about 675,000 is the actual difference in amount of money we're going to have. And I don't like to think about it as what we're going to cut. That's how much we have to do differently in a combination of more revenues and less expenditures.
All right. Well, talking about 675,000, as you said, how are we going to change? How are we going to cope with this?
Yeah, a big part was we had offered our teachers group, a potential early retirement incentive, and some teachers have decided to take that, which honestly it's good financially, but not so good with the teachers we may lose. I know that we're going to lose some very good people, and replacing them or trying to do with less is going to be very hard. But that was the first strategy, was to try to say, okay, how can we reduce expenses by attrition? And attrition meaning retirements. We will have some retirements in other areas. We for sure have 2 that are formal outside of the teaching group, and I anticipate they'll get about 2 or 3 more, in support staff. And being wise about how we rehire those is going to be a key, so to save some revenues. The other part is just to look at our expenditures and say, what can we do less with? In a school, or any public entity like we are, about 85% is salaries, for people, basically. And so with that amount, it's unfortunate, but some of those cuts are going to have to come with, people, but hopefully we can do it through attrition. I've read in the paper all kinds of schools that are laying off and doing some different things. Schools our size, like 12 teachers and 3 or 4 support staff, and it's just awful. I'm hoping to get through this without having to do layoffs and doing it through attrition instead. I think that's a better way to do it. At this point, I don't anticipate any further layoffs to deal with this. Beyond that, it's just going to be able to try to do more with a little bit less money. Our staff did a great job this year, spending a little bit less money on things. That's classroom supplies and stuff, but people just bought what they needed, not necessarily everything that they wanted. And I think that we were able to give or allow people to get everything that was needed and stay within our budget. So again, next year we're going to try to do the best we can to do more with less if we can. In terms of priorities, my priority, I know, is the kids in the classroom and making sure that is not where we want to cut. We want to maximize people. We walk around and look at classrooms and say how many students are in a class. We don't want to see 30 in every class, but then again, we don't want to see 5 or 6 in certain classes, and just being very careful and not having classes that are too small. The other end of it, more than likely at the high school end, is the like this class, the calculus class, and a lot of your college prep type classes. We want to make sure we can offer those and not cut them because there's less students. So we've got to just be real wise about that it is important to make sure that the next generation of kids has everything they need to be successful. But we're going to try our best to maximize the teachers that we have in terms of their schedule during the day and get as much out of everyone as possible, which includes class size. The other thing is our services to, and when I say services to students, all the extracurricular activities, trying not to cut any of them is the goal. I mean, stay with what we got. Are we going to be able to add stuff? Probably not, but can we keep what we have? I think there's a strong possibility that we can do that without having to dip into, not offering. For example, I know that one that came up was the plays, and I don't want to have to or have the board cut a play, and the last thing I want to do is to do that. And so that will, in terms of our priority, we start in the classroom, and then those extracurricular activities are probably number 2 priority. And then after that, other things that don't affect students as much, because I think those extracurriculars are as important as the other items that we have. And we have some things that we take great pride in that a lot of you are involved in different aspects, and we've got to make sure that we keep those intact or we lose our identity.
Very true.
All right. It's our understanding that, teachers get a certain amount of money allotted for supplies each year. Has that decreased by a substantial amount?
Last year there was a decrease, and I did an across the board, or the board decided about 10% less is what we had done. Okay. This year, the teachers are currently ordering supplies for next year. They used to do in the spring, and I continue to keep it the same. Not a cut at all, but the same as it was last year. So in reality, it was a 10% cut from 2 years ago, but it's the same as they've had. I don't think that we've denied people supplies that they need, especially come to us and ask, I really need to get this certain thing for my classroom, and try to be good about doing that. But we are being conscientious about what's being spent for supplies. So I would say not necessarily a cut, but I do have to be honest that it was 10% less than what it was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Could that possibly worsen?
The supplies, probably not, and the reason supplies won't worsen is because the things will already be ordered before we know the budget from the state. We order most everything in May.
So it's running on last year's budget, basically.
We're looking at last year's expenses and trying to stay within the same expenses.
All right. Another thing we talked about was extracurricular activities, and they cut golf, art club, and people in drama had to pay with less play.
Yeah, we had to pay $20 for the cost.
People who are doing sports are concerned that they might have to pay money in addition to all the work that they have to put in the first place. So,
and all those things are being considered in terms of I guess I'll go with the extracurricular things first. Yes, we are asking and formally asking people to do what they can do to raise money for their activity, their outside activities if possible. And I know that golf was something that was cut 2 years ago for a couple of reasons. One was just participation was the first reason, but it was costing us about $1,000 a student was the number to have golf, and it was a little bit high for the number of kids that were participating. The more kids, the less it was cost, obviously. But our club, really didn't get cut. We were planning on cutting it in January of this year, but it was put back into the budget, so I'm not sure if it's not going or not, but it wasn't cut. And then the drama club, we did ask that they do something to help out in a fundraiser or whatnot. It sounds like they came up with a $20 for participation fee. I'm not against fees to play sports. As a parent, if there was a fee to play, a fee to participate in extracurricular activities, I would not be someone that would be opposed to it. I think that we do have some community members, some kids, some students, some parents who are having trouble in these economic times, and they would probably be strapped to do it. We may have some less participation, and that worries me. But I'm not against it. I don't think our board is in favor of pay to participate in sports, pay to participate in extracurriculars. I mean, that's not something that we're going to go to it. That would be, as you say, a last resort. Could it possibly happen? Yeah. We had thought about a pay to transport fee, and that would be for any activity, including sports. And so that wouldn't necessarily be pay to play, but yes, you still would be paying a certain amount to cover the welfare.
Pay to compete.
Yeah, something like that. But against it, no. And certainly I'm not against it, but I'd like to keep the cost down to the parents.